Drawing from life. The act of observing life with an awareness and sensitivity to the elements of realism, recording only what you observe as accurately as possible. Contour line. The shared edge between two forms of a positive space of a form and the negative space of the background. Edge. Edge of an object refers to the point at which two planes meet. Cross, contour. A wireframe or a series of shapes that define the details inside the contour edges of an object. Plane. A flat area of the surface of an object and is defined by the distance between two parallel lines. Positive and negative space. Positive space refers to the space occupied by an object. Negative space refers to an unoccupied space of the composition. Negative space refers to the unoccupied space of the composition. Positive space refers to the space occupied by an object. Foreground refers to the illusory space closest to the picture plane or the viewer. Middle ground refers to the illusory space that appears to occupy the middle depth of the piece. It is illusory space between the foreground and background. Background. To the environment surrounding the focal point of the drawing. Illusory space refers to the illusory of three-dimensional space and depth as defined on a two-dimensional picture plane. Expressive line captures the essence and spontaneity of your subject. Exploratory line. It is less directed, deliberate approach to line in which artists engage in a searching process to eventually determine the placement of a contour edge. Implied line occurs when there is a break in a line resulting in a blank or a missing section that our eye fills in. Line contour drawing. Drawing the contours of your subject without looking at your paper for the duration of the drawing process. Modified contour drawing. Drawing the contours of the subject, drawing the contours of the object by keeping your focus on the subject, only looking at the paper occasionally to adjust the position of your drawing tool to maintain accurate proportion. Proportion. The size of an object relative to the other objects and its placement within its surroundings. Proportion. The size of an object relative to the other objects and to its placement within its surroundings. Gesture studies, aka quick studies of form. Gesture technique, a natural progression from contour study which prepares the artist for the upcoming sustained level of drawing. Still life. Inanimate objects used as the subject matter. Arranged still life. A group of objects that have been carefully configured for a sustained study or a full rendered drawing. Perspective. A method of drawing a three-dimensional scene on a two-dimensional surface and includes the illusion of the subject matter receding back in space. Horizon line refers to the eye level of the artist. Foreshortening, the illusion of an object or a subject coming toward the picture plane of the viewer. Proportion refers to the relative space and relationships of the parts of a single object or the comparison in size of multiple objects to one another. Object relationship, spatial relationship, refers to how two objects relate to each other in terms of scale and position in an arrangement. Sighting, a method of determining visual measurements or proportion, an object. Central axis, an imaginary line running down the center of a middle, an imaginary line running down the center or middle of an object. Structure refers to the underlying armature that holds up the outer surface of the object. Linear perspective is a mathematical method of determining the angles of objects as they recede and is used by artists to create the illusion of three-dimensional space on a two-dimensional surface or depth. Intuitive perspective, the artist's ability to visualize the correct perspective without mapping out a formal horizon line, vanishing points during the drawing process. One-point perspective depicts objects with one side squarely facing the picture plane and runs parallel to all four sides of the paper. Two-point perspective depicts the objects that are turned at an angle to the viewer. Three-point perspective, used when the viewer is looking at an object from a bird's or worm's eye. Viewing involves a third vanishing point off of the horizon line. Right? Three-point perspective is used when the viewer is looking at an object from either a bird's eye view or a worm's eye view, and it involves an additional third vanishing point off of the horizon line. Chiaroscuro, an Italian word meaning the use of shading using a range of values from white to black to create the illusion of three-dimensional volume. Shading is determined through the observation of light and shadow and defines a consistent light source. Transitional tones are gradations of values on the value scale between black and white. Value refers to varying shades of grays, including blacks and white. Value refers to varying shades of grays, including black and white, and is used in drawing to represent light and shadow and to define form. Volume refers to the size of an object and defines the width, height, and depth of the space it occupies. Right? Volume refers to the size of an object and it defines the width, height, and depth of the space that object occupies. Mass refers to the actual object and implies weight or solidity of an object. Form of an object refers to its basic structure apart from external. Form is defined using tones to define light and shadow or shading. Local color refers to the base color of the object. Hue identifies a color. Composition refers to the way visual elements are arranged within the frame or picture frame. Gestalt, the point at which the finished drawing becomes more valued than its individual parts. How each object affects the whole. Balance refers to how composition is arranged. asymmetrical balance is the implication of visual symmetry, right? Asymmetrical balance is the implication of visual symmetry without precisely duplicating the same volume and mass on both sides of composition. Asymmetry creates a visually more dynamic composition by achieving, right? A symmetry creates a visually more dynamic composition, and this is achieved by using objects of varying scale to create a visually dynamic composition which invites the viewer in and allows them to move around the drawing, right? Invites them in a dynamic way, and it creates this visual movement, taking the viewer all around the drawing. Focal point, a key interest or emphasis within the composition. Picture plane, the imaginary rectangle around your physical subject matter that represents your drawing image area. Texture. Texture refers to the unique characteristics of the surface of an object, and it implies descriptive and visual tactile information, such as smooth, rough, hard, soft, reflective, translucent, opaque, and so forth. Local texture refers to the tangible texture of the object. Opaque describes an object that light cannot pass through, therefore the object cannot be seen through. Translucent surfaces allows diffused light to pass through. Shadows and shapes cannot be seen through translucent object. Transparent objects allow light and images to pass through unobstructed. Reflective. Reflections are light or images bouncing off of a mirrored surface. The surface itself is referred to as a reflective surface. Refractive. Refractive refers to a reflective surface that is curved, and refractive or bends light or an image such as a stainless steel bowl. Subject matter, still life, environments, portrait.